I'll go through some of the engineering behind the spore trap here. So here's the spore trap itself, just kind of a wind funnel, looks like a bit of a wind vane. What's kind of handy about it is it screws off here, so you can just kind of, we engineered these little units here. So all you have to do is screw it on. I think yeah, threaded pipe is another thing we could do, but what's nice about this system we put together here is we can raise and lower the unit. So as the canola gets taller, or the crop gets taller, we can kind of raise it up and stay above the crop canopy, or go lower if we need. So you kind of want this thing to be, 6 inches above canopy, so you don't want it buried under the canopy so it doesn't collect any spores. Each spore trap is fitted up with a cassette. So this is the cassette. It has a thin membrane inside, and that's what collects all the spores throughout the placement time period. So it very simply just snaps into place. So as long as I've got it the right direction here, just pops right in, and then your spore trap is set. So to pull it out at the end of the week, simple as pulling it out. We've stored in a little plastic bag, send it in the mail, and there you go. So pretty simple to get yourself set up with a spore trapping system. Each of our fields is set up with a weather station just like this, and this gives us that additional piece of information. So of course we're trying to determine whether or not the pathogen is present, but that's not the full story for our risk for disease. We also want to know, what's the humidity, what's the moisture been, what's the temperature, and taking those pieces of information together helps us to make a decision on whether or not to spray. So each of these weather stations does measure the relative humidity, the amount of precipitation, the temperature, those sort of key factors for the field. And we've got it in the field, in the crop, where, with some evapotranspiration that could increase the, the humidity and kind of increase that risk factor. Another note would be that each of our fields is located on an irrigated field, so we know we have a higher disease risk. We're going to have that moisture, that robust crop growth, that dense canopy cover, and those are factors that contribute to the risk for disease, in this case sclerotinia. Okay, so I will kind of at the end of the season here, so I'm going to collect a 1 meter squared sample. So I'll pull it out. We'll take that our facility, fresh it out, and then we'll get tested for Dawn and FDK on the fusarium side of things. So this sample here, this is right where right beside our spore trap. So throughout the season, whenever our collaborating farmer is spraying the crop, they are turning off their sprayer for just a few seconds at this location, giving us a check that has been unprotected by fungicide. So that's going to give us some important information as far as when spores are or are not present, and what the conditions are, and whether or not disease does establish. I've got our sample from our untreated location, so this is going to tell us what disease manifested without crop protection. Now I'm going to grab my second sample, and I'm going to walk out to a little ways out there, and we'll grab a sample from somewhere that has been treated with fungicide, and we'll be able to compare the difference. So that's just going to give us that practical piece. So we're learning about the spores, whether or not they're present, but does it actually make a difference? Can we actually see that we could have sprayed less fungicide and had some different manifestation of disease? Here we are at one of our dry bean fields. So we have 2 dry bean fields, and this one is worth taking a look at just for the location side of things. So we've got a little bit more variable terrain. So if you look behind me, Sarah's just removing our last spore trap there, but that location on that hilltop, that's our low risk area. So it's an obvious area where there's going to be probably sparser vegetation, less canopy closure, a little more access to wind, and lower risk for disease. And you can't see it from here, but our high risk area is actually a little ways down that way, and it's in an obvious valley in the field where there's going to be more moisture aggregation, probably more humidity because of that sitting moisture that might stay there, be there a little longer, denser crop canopy. So that's one of the things we really wanted to key in on this trial is, does it matter where in the field we place them? And in a field like this where there's an obvious difference between the high risk and low risk areas, do we see a difference in the testing, or are the tests consistent? And that'll give us important information for farmers to use the spore traps. Where do we place them? Does it matter where we place them in a field? Can we place them right on the field edge? Because that's probably the most practical way to go from a logistics standpoint. We're in our dry bean field, and Sarah's just changing out the cassette. And so again, we're doing our disease assessments in every field, and dry beans are generally very susceptible to white mold, sclerotinia. And I don't know if it's because it's been so hot and so dry this year, but we're seeing a lot less disease. I'm not really seeing anything here at this location that has been unsprayed throughout the season. This is our field edge location. We'll head over to our high risk location and see if there's a difference. But we've got some here. But last year when we did this, there was, perfect. There was mold everywhere. So yeah, here we go. There we go. So this white mold developing on this pod. So that's sort of a low level mold. When it sort of develops in the stem, that's going to affect the whole plant, and that's sort of a higher risk. But this is very, very common in dry beans, especially at this stage. We've got the canopy closure, not a lot of airflow, and it's really, really tough to manage. So knowing that pathogen is present is kind of a nice piece of information to have.